Picture, if you will, an apple. It's red or green, it's crunchy and juicy. It's a very nice apple. And that apple has a market value. Now, picture a change in the world that results in everyone deciding that apples should be free. In that scenario, what happens to the people who plant and grow and harvest the apples? They still have a product, but they can't get paid in the way they used to. Now, picture that apple is in demand everywhere. Every time you turn on your TV and see a commercial, there's that apple. When you download an app for your phone, there's that apple. In the movies, in video games, in restaurants, there's that apple. In 2015, the music business is kind of like this. Everyone wants to use music because music sets moods. It creates emotions, it makes people want to dance. In other words, it has value. Yet the marketplace says it's free. This is the dilemma that people who make music find themselves in today. It still costs the same to record and press and promote an album, yet we can't sell this product like we used to. So those of us who produce the music, the artists and labels, have to wonder how long we can keep this up. Is there a future in music, or what? This is The Future of What? I'm Portia Sabin, and I have a question. Do these songs sound the same to you? If you think those songs sound similar, a judge agrees with you. But what does sounding similar mean these days? On today's episode, we'll talk about a $5.3 million lawsuit and how it might change the music industry. Also coming up, we talk Apple Music's new streaming service, Drake versus Meek Mill, and summer festivals. That's all ahead on The Future of What? Sarah Merck is the online editor at Bitch Media, where she writes and edits daily articles and also hosts the twice-monthly radio podcast, Popaganda. Sarah, welcome to The Future of What?
Hi, it's great to be here.
Max Smith is the editor-in-chief of We Out Here, the Northwest's premier hip-hop lifestyle magazine. Mac, welcome to The Future of What?
Hey, how you doing?
Chris Young is the founder and editor-in-chief of Vortex Music Magazine. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, I'm so glad to have you guys all here today. This is rad.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. So the first question I want to ask you guys, because I am fascinated by this in general, is how do you guys listen to music in general? Like, what services do you use?
Oh, I like that question a lot because it speaks to, I think, age and technology. I don't have to go first. One of you guys can go. But I like that question.
Thank you.
My main music source is my inbox. If you can imagine writing a music magazine, you get a lot of emails every day.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I struggle to even keep up with the amount of music that I get through my inbox, and a lot of that is streaming. I would say the service I use most is SoundCloud. So these are labels and these are artists that are sending me like direct links to their music that they've uploaded themselves on SoundCloud.
Right.
And those a lot of times are available to everyone in the public as well.
Let me ask you a question, because I get the same problem running a record label. If you ever get someone sending you a Dropbox links, do you write back and say, send me a stream or I won't listen to it? Because I do.
Sometimes. It really just depends. Yeah, there's a thing that happens where it's like it goes in stages. I will listen to a stream probably most readily. If I really think I like it, I'll download it. But then if it actually gets into my iTunes library and I ever listen to it again, that's like a whole nother
That's serious.
thing.
That's a serious commitment.
Right.
Putting it in your iTunes library.
Exactly.
That's like you're dating that song.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Bandcamp and SoundCloud are probably the services that I use the most all the time.
Mac, how about you?
I've got to agree. I mean, doing a blog that handles mostly music, that's exactly where it is. The inbox, first of all, it's got to be a SoundCloud or a Bandcamp. I refuse to listen to like a Reverb Nation or anything like that. Like I refuse. I will actually call them and say, hey, don't ever email me again.
Take that, Reverb Nation.
Period. I make it a point to put them down every chance I get. But yeah, I mean that's a big thing. And then besides that, I'm still, I think, just old enough that I will actually burn a CD and listen to it in my car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
If it's available easily, I will do that.
I recently got a demo from a band on CD with no email address attached to it. And I have a new MacBook, so there's no CD drive. And I waited around, and then sure enough, about a week later, I got an email, and they were like, hey, have you listened to our CD yet? And I was like, dudes, on what? On what am I supposed to listen to the CD? I was just completely confused. But yeah, car, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree since I am the online editor at Bitch, so we cover a lot of music, specifically female-fronted bands and queer-fronted bands. And so I get probably 15 to 20 emails a day about new music that's coming out. Everything from really big bands, like Bikini Kill, to some super small artist who's like, hey, we're like working on our first EP. Can you listen to this? And I always try to listen to everything that people send to me if it's streaming and I can do that. So I feel super lucky that way. I probably hear 2 new bands every day, and I'm just sort of overwhelmed with a lot of new and wonderful music. I also listen to pretty much all day long. I have headphones in when I'm at work because people are talking and I can't handle it. So I have pretty much all day long I have headphones and I'm listening either to OPB Music streams 24 hours a day, and it's great. And also X-Ray FM streams music in the afternoon. I listen to both of those streams to find just new music, and they have really great curated selections. So I really appreciate both of those services too.
Cool. Has anyone used Apple Music yet?
No?
A little bit. My designer for the magazine is a couple years younger than me, so he's like even more hip to it. So he kind of gave me the rundown of it a couple days ago. We had a big conversation about it.
What did he tell you about it?
He really actually liked all the curated channels from the individual artists, whether that was like Dr. Dre or, I don't know, Drake or whoever, because he did say that he had found quite a bit of new music on there through the curated portion of it.
Has anyone heard about these problems with Apple Music where it might like erase your entire library of songs that you've painstakingly developed over years?
I'm
No.
a joy user over here. I don't know.
No?
Because that's the thing that I had heard, which sounded kind of problematic. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like it just it was this big explosion. Everyone was like, Apple Music. And then now no one's talking about it at all. Just kind of disappeared.
I haven't ever listened to it, so maybe it's not worthwhile.
Yeah. What about Tidal? You guys ever use that?
No, even less.
I haven't even downloaded that app. I'm still on Spotify. I mean, I don't know if I'm old or not, but that's where I stay.
Yeah,
at
I think
this point
most
for new stuff.
people I know use Spotify, which I think is a great service. I don't know how it affects artists. I keep reading, I feel like every other week there's a think piece that's like, Spotify is killing music or Spotify is saving music, and I'm not sure what the current politics of it are. Is it saving or is it killing? I don't know. I also use a service called 8 Tracks, which is a mixtape website where you can upload songs to make mixtapes. And I make mixtapes most weeks, and that's a really fun way to find new music, where everything from like a random, teenage girl in Montreal put together her breakup songs I love, to people putting together like history of electronica, history of soul mixtapes. So that's another thing that I value is 8 Tracks. And it's fun. I think mixtapes are a generational thing too. I had an intern who I think she was like 18, and I said, "Oh, can you make a mixtape for us?" And she didn't know what that was. And I was like, "It's like a playlist." And she's like, "Oh, a playlist."
It's kind of like an album.
And then she made it, and she's like, "Here's your mixed tape." And I was like, "Oh, that's cute."
Well, and also depends what genre you're in, because I interviewed somebody in Atlanta about mixtapes, which apparently, in my day, a mixtape was a cassette tape that had different artists on it. And from what I understand, a hip-hop mixtape is the same artist, but with different stuff that they've done.
It's basically like a legal term to steal beats and make songs over them without getting sued.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. But it's still the same artist, right? It's not
Yeah,
like a whole
it
bunch
usually
of
is.
different
It
artists.
usually is, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, whoa.
As a kid, it wasn't, though. I totally agree.
Right. It was like, I have The Cure and Joy Division and whoever on my mixtape. But that's different. Those are the old days. So I think it's interesting, Sarah, that you listen to OPB and X-Ray, which are actually both terrestrial radio stations that have online streaming components. Does anyone listen to internet radio, straight up internet radio like Pandora or Sirius?
I don't, but I do. The people that I find, I guess, like I can like lump a lot of my friends into two groups depending on how engaged they are with music. And the people that are more engaged will go for Spotify. You know, it's kind of choose your own adventure sort of thing. And then the people that are a little bit less engaged and maybe know that they like the Black Keys, for example, will go to Pandora and then just put the Black Keys into there. But I have also found that some of those friends that get stuck kind of in the Pandora thing get really sick of it after not too long because they're just getting fed the same thing over and over from the few limited artists that they maybe know that they already like.
Interesting. That brings up an interesting topic. I have no idea if you guys want to talk about it, but I always say that 90% of people don't actually like music in the world. But there's
What's that mean?
well, like 10% of people are crazy music people. And then the rest of the people are like people where if you meet them at a party and you say, hey, what kind of music do you listen to? They go, everything.
Well, they
You
still
know?
like music, though.
Well,
But
they
they don't-
do, but they don't
Yeah.
like it like a crazy person.
You know what I think is? I think that there's like a lot of nervousness around identifying yourself as a music fan or even as a music nerd, because then people expect you to know a lot about it. And so oftentimes I feel like there's kind of an exclusionary thing where it's like as soon as you say you like a genre, people are like, oh yeah, well how about this artist, this artist, this artist? Like, do you know about this thing that's going on? And you're like, dude, I just listen to music. Like, and so I don't know. I think some people sort of sell themselves short on being like, oh yeah, I listen to music all the time, but I'm not like, I don't like know anything about it.
That's a good theory. I could go with that.
It's fans versus aficionados.
Yeah,
Right.
Where people, I know lots of people who listen to music, lots and lots of music, but would feel nervous expressing an opinion about it because they're like, oh, I don't know if this is cool. I don't know if I'm cool. I don't know, if I know everything about it, and I don't want to get like shut down.
That's how I feel about jazz. Like I love listening to jazz,
Yeah,
but I couldn't tell you like who plays what or what the instrument is. I'm just like, and that's no, it's good and I like it.
Yeah.
Just kind of listen to Future.
I'm the same way. I listen to jazz a lot and love it, but I would never be like, I'm a jazz fan because I haven't read every book about it.
No.
That is interesting. I once was in a car with my stepsister who is a cellist, and we were listening to a classical station, and it was literally like driving down the road with me listening to an alternative station. Because she was like, oh, this is Dvorak such and such, and it's this is the recording by the Cleveland Symphony from 1997. I was like, how do you know that? It is impossible. But somehow, it just depends on what you're into, and people can get really into stuff.
Did you keep on yelling? There's nobody talking.
She's like, I can tell the way the conductor moves his baton. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Crazy people. All right. Well, so have any of you guys been to any festivals yet this summer?
Yeah. I went to What the Festival, spent some time at Project Paps the other weekend. PDX Pop Now was last weekend.
That's right. I actually went there and made one basket in my basketball
Oh,
game.
nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have never made a basket in my life.
Was this the Kill Rock Stars Rigsketball team?
Yes.
How'd you do?
We won our first game and then we got killed the second game. But I wasn't playing the second game. They found somebody better
Did they?
to sub for me. Yeah, or did they? Exactly.
Apparently not.
I think they played someone a lot harder, definitely. But yeah, that's something as I get as a tall woman. People look at me and they're like, you must totally know how to play basketball. I'm like, sorry, not a damn clue. Like, totally useless.
I'm also super tall, and I was also on a Rigsketball team last year at PDX Pop Now, and I also did not do a very good job. It's really intense. It's really, I guess I was just there kind of like to have fun, but some people were playing to win for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Which we
You and
played-
I should get together, and next year we can really take them.
I played
Start
last year
practicing.
too, but it was Ramadan and I was fasting.
Oh,
and,
yeah, so you're-
in the first game it was great. I scored 13 straight buckets, and then
What?
and we won the first game. Then the second game I was exhausted, and I had to sit down on the bench, and we lost. So
That's still you fasting is like 100 times better than me full of food.
I don't know. After that first game, I was pretty weak. I'll tell you, it was like 98 degrees, and I was dying.
That is hilarious. Mac, have you been to any festivals lately?
I actually have not. I was gonna go to What the Festival, but I sent 2 writers instead, and they did a great job. We actually have a piece up now about it. Actually, one of my writers got tripped out on acid up there and wrote the article in that perspective, so it's pretty interesting. And then I was gonna go to obviously PDX Pop Now, but I actually threw out my back last week, so
Oh, no.
I ended up staying home.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Project Pabst, I ran into Will, who is one of the producers on the show, when they were headed to Project Pabst, and it was so hot that I was so grateful that I wasn't going. I couldn't even believe it.
Yeah, I went down there the first day early, and I just couldn't, I went down to see Hustle and Drone and Pryor, which are both Portland bands,
Right.
and I just couldn't even stand still to watch them. It was too hot. I had to just walk around.
And isn't it in like a big dirt lot?
Yeah,
Oh,
big
man.
gravel lot.
Oh my God. You guys are better people than I am. Do you like festivals? Are you guys like fans of festivals?
I typically don't like festivals for exactly the reason you just articulated, which is when I see music, I like it to be a small crowd in like a small space where you're like at a good temperature and you can dance a lot if you want to, but you could also sit down if you want to, and maybe they play for 30 minutes or an hour and then you go home and fall asleep. And festivals are like the opposite of that, I feel like, where I just feel like I'm trapped and everyone's sweaty and we're surrounded by people and everything is like expensive. So most festivals I really studiously avoid, but I do have two local festivals that I love. I like the Helsing Junction, which is put on by K Records up in Washington. That's a great festival. It's like a camp out at a farm, and you just camp out and hang out all weekend and watch various bands play as you sit on hay bales and eat tamales. It's great. And then I also love Pickathon, which is coming up this weekend at Pendarvis Farm. And that's another one where I like that they have every band play multiple sets, so there's not a lot of pressure to see a band at a certain time, so it's less crowded. And then also, if you get overwhelmed, you go take a hike in the woods, because it's right next to this big, huge, shady forest. And so it's good for people like me who get kind of overwhelmed by crowds and want to make an escape. You can just escape to the trees, and it's great.
Anyone else have any positives about festivals? Negatives?
I actually like festivals. It's just, I think it's what you said as well. It's just so many people and they get so busy. But I think that they're great as far as finding a new music. I mean, especially, coming out of a hip hop background, like there's not a lot of hip hop festivals in the Northwest really at all. So, I mean, if there is one that, has hip hop, I tend to usually try and show up and see what's going on. It's really a different experience for me than it is for a lot of rock fans and things like that.
Sarah, you actually wrote about festivals just recently.
Yeah, we wrote for Bitch about this interesting visual project that took the posters for summer music festivals and, the posters list all the names of the bands that are going to play, and then they erased all the names of the bands that were all male. So it left just the bands that had any women in them at all. And for a wide swath of festivals around the United States as well as around England. And what the project showed is that there's not very many bands that have women in them that are booked at these major festivals. Everything from Bumper Shoot to Coachella and everywhere in between. There's just not a lot of women-fronted bands or bands that even include women that are booked at them. I think it was anywhere from 0% to about 30 to 35% of the bands that were booked had any women in them at all. So it was a good way to show sort of the systematic discrimination in the music industry and the way that women in the music industry are sort of downplayed in various ways, including being booked at festivals and getting that recognition.
I mean, what do you think that's about? What do you think bands with women in them not being booked at certain festivals is about specifically?
Well, I think it's one aspect, of course, of like systemic discrimination in our society at large based on gender, and this is one symptom of that and one way it comes out. And it also speaks to, are there fewer women who are encouraged to be in bands, who are encouraged to form bands? Does that mean that there's fewer female-fronted bands out there in the United States in general? I don't have any statistics on that, but I do know that the women who are in the music industry across the board speak of the challenges that they face because of their gender and the assumptions about them because of that, either pigeonholing, saying, oh, you should play this certain kind of music, or, oh, we only are booking one female-fronted band on this bill. We just ran an interview with a British heavy metal band that said, yeah, when they go to a festival, they've been told straight up, like, we're only booking, one female headliner for this festival. So there's that kind of really outspoken discrimination of sort of people who are the culture makers who are booking these things saying, we think we know what people are going to want and it's not you. And that's sad, I think, because I think the festivals that do have a wider diversity of the kind of music that they have and who they showcase bring in a lot more people and can bring in people who are fans of those bands. And so that's what I think it speaks to.
I also wonder if it doesn't have something to do with female bands having worse booking agents.
Yeah, or a lot of the amazing bands I know that are fronted by women having to really hoof it a lot more themselves than the bands I know who are of like a similar caliber who are dudes. Whether they're doing their own management, they're doing their own booking, they're at a much smaller label, so a lot of them are going a more indie route and a DIY route for getting their music out to people, which is great because they have more control over it, but it also puts a lot of work and pressure on you as an artist to like be working 10 different jobs instead of just making music.
Sort of in contrast to that, though, Mac, you guys recently put on an all-girl hip-hop show.
We did. We have a monthly event called The Thesis that we have downtown at Kelly's Olympian. And last month, actually, we kind of gave it a shot, not on the all-girls thing, but the prior month in May, there's a great hip-hop duo called Nika and Kahlo. And Nika is actually a singer and a producer, and Kahlo is her wife, and she raps. And they have a pretty good following in Portland. And so we had them headline as kind of a test. And it went really well. So the following month, we brought down a Gifted Gab from Seattle and brought out the Carmen Rivera from Vancouver and a singer from Kennewick. Her name is Jay Kelly. And then we had Alia Zin, who's actually from Berkeley, and she recently came up to Portland. So she's living up here now. And so it was all local show, all females. We had about 100 people in the building. And it went really well. I mean, it was a packed show. It was a great time. So I think it's really important, especially in hip-hop, to kind of branch out and do different things. I feel like for a long time, hip-hop has been a boys' game, really a black guy's game, except in the Northwest. Northwest has kind of been a white guy's game. But we're just kind of trying to break that wall down and say this is really just a game that we can all play in. And so this month we actually have coming up, we have Glenn Waco and supporting him are Wes Guy and Elton Cray, who's an openly gay rapper, which is pretty rare in hip-hop. You don't get a whole lot of openly gay rappers. It's usually like a punchline, not a starting point. So just to try to change some of that perspective in the game and switch it up a little bit.
I should look those artists up. They sound cool.
Or come out to the show.
Yeah,
we'll be there.
That'd be great too.
Yeah, I'll get you a ticket. Let me know.
So we have to touch on this quickly, even though it's annoying, because it does have bearing on, where we live. We do live in Portland, and the national picture of Portland is sort of skewed by this national television show that we have that is about Portland. And I just wondered what you guys thought, because there's this image out there of what Portland is like. And do you guys feel like the music scene, how do you feel like the music scene in Portland really is, as opposed to how it's portrayed on TV in that nameless TV show? We can say Portlandia. It's okay.
So how's it portrayed on the show? How would you say it's portrayed?
I don't know. I
don't watch the show.
I don't really watch the show either, but I do know, it's like we've had such an influx into the music scene in this town in the last few years since that show's been popular. I think people definitely get the, just sort of the generic, where everybody's homebrewing beer and everybody's, doing these individual craft projects and, and a lot of that is really true.
Isn't that how it is?
Yeah. Well, that's sort of what I'm asking. That's sort of really true about this town. But, not that, a couple of years ago we had we're the epicenter of kind of a weird Americana folk revival thing. And for a while there were bands with 13 people in them on stage.
You mean Typhoon?
Yes. Typhoon, etc.
Well, okay, so I think Portlandia is interesting because people always ask me about Portlandia because I'm from Portland whenever I travel. And I think that people don't get that it's making fun of a subculture that exists around the United States in any city. You could call it Silver Lake Landia in Los Angeles. You could call it Brooklyn Landia or Williamsburg Landia. But people like to put it on Portland as oh, that's you guys. And I'm like, we are sitting in a fancy coffee shop in Oakland right now. This is right here too. But you know what? I think that sort of the misconception people have about Portland is that people here are slackers who don't try hard. And everybody I know who plays music in Portland is really creative and really does work to make the best music possible. And so I think people get dismissive of that. If you're like, oh yeah, I play in a band and I live in Portland, my friends in New York are like, yeah, I work at a bank. And so I think that that's dismissive of people's talents and the work that they put into it. And I do think that the Northwest, Seattle and Portland and Olympia have a lot of really talented musicians who work really hard and contribute an enormous amount to the national music culture. And to sort of dismiss that as oh, you're just a bunch of slackers with banjos, I think that feels like a misconception to me.
I think that from the outside of the indie scene, kind of looking in, I see Portlandia and the bands, how they're portrayed on there or whatever, and how we see him in real life, and to me it looks kind of the same. I mean, that's just me though, but I'm also in the hip hop world more, so like for us it's completely opposite of what's reality for us. So I mean, in the hip hop world you'll hear a lot of references from Portland rappers talking about this is not Portlandia, or I'm not from Portlandia, or I don't even know where that is, or this isn't the 23rd or Alberta or whatever it is. That's the hot spot nowadays. I feel like in hip hop, it's way different. It's like Portlandia. What is that? Those are the folks that we pass by at a new seasons, but it's not something that most rappers identify with. It's kind of a foreign thing that's there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Portlandia works because there is a shred of truth in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hyper realized.
Yeah.
There's a chunk of truth. Yeah.
There's definitely a chunk of truth. I could not agree more that there is. But it's interesting what Sarah you said. Like, I actually found when I moved here that people in bands here seem super hardworking, and a lot of people I knew in bands would actually be in multiple bands and be. Is that true of the hip hop scene too? Do people?
Oh yeah.
Collaborate a lot?
It's more of cliques in hip hop, but there's definitely a lot of clique jumping in the hip hop world out here for sure.
Because I feel like I know people who are in a weird 13-person banjo band and then like a metal band and also this other band. So I feel like there's a lot of collaboration, which I think is the sort of positive of this town.
Yeah, and that's something that I've heard that I think is definitely unique to here. I don't really have a lot of firsthand experiences on what it might be like in Seattle or something like that. But I've just anecdotally heard that people seem very open and welcoming with their time and their talents and their connections and things like that. So yeah, you do find someone. I mean, I've had Sally Ford tell me stories about how when she was just starting playing, she would play some benefit show at the Crystal Ballroom and maybe members of the Decemberists were playing, and they just had a little like connection backstage, and quite a few good things for her came from that were maybe even outside of the Portland music scene. That I think like one of them might have been like helping her get on like a record label that I think might have been somewhere outside of Portland even as well. So yeah, I think that there always is the trend though that people seem not just in the music scene but in general in Portland very generous with their time, and it's not just all about money.
I totally agree. I mean, even in the hip hop side, I mean, like I think back a couple of years, and rap was really struggling here, and then T&E actually linked up with the Radiation City and did that a collaboration album, and since then it's really has picked up a lot on the hip hop scene because it kind of did appeal to that massive indie crowd that we have in Portland. It's been really hard for hip hop to really get a good traction here, and those kind of collaborations have really helped. In Seattle, the same thing with the Nacho Picasso and Blue Sky Black Death. They've really done a lot of collaborative stuff that's pushed the envelope and kind of pushed the genre out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in people's conception of Portland, I feel like International Vision, people don't think of hip hop and rap happening in Portland, and they definitely don't think of, I don't know, and I think that plays into Portlanders' perceptions too. I mean, a few years ago, maybe last year, we had a whole bunch of problems with like Portland police really cracking down on hip hop shows and rap shows in town in a way that they never would have cracked down on an indie show, going on in a basement. And I think that if they had been cracking down on a show by the Decemberists, we would have heard a lot more outcry about it. If they had been cracking down on a show by a local indie band, it would have been something that was much front page news that everybody knew about, rather than like, oh, it's not, that's not part of people's conception of like what happens in Portland.
Well, it's funny because after the Blue Monk show last year that got shut down and the club ended up closing, all that kind of stuff, there was a lot of the BuzzFeed articles and stuff about the Portland hip hop, and we actually made a joke inside the a magazine that in the future, no more articles are going to start with hip hop in Portland. You wouldn't expect that because it seemed like every single article that dropped about it was like, oh, so you never expect this, but there's rappers in Portland and the police are bothering them. And we're like, yeah, we know, we shouldn't expect it, but every single article says that. So we all agreed, like across the blogging hip hop, a community, like no more articles starting with that. That's the worst.
So we have to lose Sarah Merck now. She's an editor at Bitch Magazine and a host of the podcast Popaganda. Sarah, thanks so much for being on The Future of What?
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Mac Smith and Chris Young are going to stay with us, and you should too, because in a moment, we ask if the similarities between this song and this song are worth $5.3 million. Stay with us. It's The Future of What, a show about the music industry. I'm Portia Sabin. Joining us in studio is Max Smith of We Out Here and Chris Young of Vortex Music Magazine. Also joining us is my co-conspirator and production manager at Kill Rock Stars, James Reeling. James also used to write and edit the zine Sincere Brutality. James, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, there is a current beef in the hip-hop world between Drake and Meek Mill because Meek accused Drake of having a ghostwriter. And this has gotten tons of attention. And Mac, I wanted you to talk about this a little bit because I'm interested in the concept of ghostwriting in hip-hop. I mean, is this actually something that people really care about?
I think it is to a degree. I've been labeled recently an old head. I'm 34, so I'm old now in hip hop, right? I'm a statue of old times past. So, in the time that I grew up, hip hop, and even in the time that before I grew up, really, hip hop has kind of always been the idea of it's the expression of people that don't have a voice. So just kind of taking that platform and moving it forward, it's really hard to say I don't have a voice, but I'm not actually writing this. You know what I mean? So if you look at hip hop, I'm from an angle of just being an entertainment business. I don't think anybody really cares. I mean, Young Thug is amazingly popular, and I don't even know what he's saying. So, whether or not he's actually writing it, I don't think makes any difference. But if you look back at classic rappers, from Jay-Z or Biggie or even further back, there's always has kind of been a emphasis on rappers that were able to improvise off the tops, so kind of just a freestyle, whatnot. And also just those that had a gift for a lyricism. In rapping, you're not singing, you're not hitting any notes. So people say, well, Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston don't write their own songs, but they also have gifts, whereas, a rapper per se is really just rapping on a beat. So, just kind of talking on a beat. So it's a lot different. It's still a talent and a skill, but it's not quite the same as having like a real gift. I think that in the current industry, there's definitely a rift between the, a younger generation that perhaps doesn't care and really only knows the commercial version of hip hop, and the folks that have kind of been fed the classics since they were kids.
What I think is really interesting about this is, it's like when I think of hip hop, because I'm older than you, so I'm like ancient. I'm like a statue with moss on it, basically, compared to you. But, when I think, because I used to listen, I grew up in New York City, I used to listen to Funkmaster Flex. I used to listen to, the tapes that people put out. I mean,
right.
I can sing every line of Cosmo D and the Get Fresh Crew or something, like that song, which was on the radio, which I love, and I was like 10 or something. And when hip hop really was on the radio in New York when it was getting started. And I think the thing about hip hop is that on one level it's protest music, and what was really special and exciting about it was kind of like bricolage. Like it was pieces, it was found pieces, it was people using stuff, putting stuff together in a new way, and making protest music out of it. And that from like the political, the cultural, the social standpoint is what is I think amazing about hip hop and really awesome. But then there's this other part, which is that just a few years down the road, it actually started making money.
Right.
And then the people who care about money got involved. And then suddenly, when people who care about money and when something is making money, you have to worry about stuff like who wrote this song, because there's going to be money involved. And I feel like that's been this interesting, it's still to this day, it's this knife edge, right? It's in hip hop.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, in rap, a big thing, I think just in the culture really is authenticity is really a big thing. So, I mean, it's kind of like if you're listening to indie rock, like I don't think anyone necessarily cares who sings, just pop a song A. But if someone is telling a story about their life or about, their struggles and their trials and tribulations, and you find like it's not even their story, it's just kind of weird, you know what I mean? So I think that some people take offense to that. I think a lot of folks take offense to that. I think a lot of folks could really care less. And as long as it turns up in the club, they don't really care what it does or where it came from, as long as it's there. I mean, like in the case of Drake, I mean, I'm not a huge Drake fan. I do listen to his last album. I like it actually a lot. But, it's definitely a strange thing. You've got a guy that is auto-tuning his raps, not even his singing, but his raps, to fit into the niche of the beat, and kind of, so all of it is very unnatural. It's kind of like Borg rap, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like, yeah, he's really a man, but he's got these cybernetic things going on. So it's kind of a different thing. It's kind of is built to be pleasurable unto the ear, It's inside the studio, so it's definitely a different thing. And then he's just a mega celebrity. So on top of that, you have his hive is behind him.
So do you think some of this is a little bit engineered just for publicity?
I would assume that all of it is. I mean, you've got a guy in Meek Mill who has never really been, a mega star, who's obviously inside of an album cycle, who is, just randomly out of the blue attacking the megastar of the industry whose girlfriend happens to be on this same label as this other guy. I mean, and she's like ranting about how she didn't get a music award, and they're like having this beef at the exact same time. It's like it seems incredibly staged to me. I've been a part of a couple of authentic and staged hip hop beefs and seen those play out, and I'll tell you, this one looks really staged to me. But people love it. It causes a whole lot of Twitter's been on fire. I think it was like the Huffington Post and like a New York Daily. They're like, Funk Flex said he had a reply and he didn't, and everyone was like mad. And it's just a whole lot of nonsense, but it's entertaining, And like I have a lot of friends that we always say, rap is just the WWE now. It's
right.
Those guys really are jumping off the top rope, but it's onto a trampoline and it's all good. So it's not like it was back in the day when these kind of things escalated into obviously much more critical and problematic things. And that's probably a good thing that it's not the same way.
Yeah, and like a Tupac and
we don't want everybody to die in Vegas.
Yeah,
there's a Mayweather
necessary
fight coming up, and nobody wants to get shot there, so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated because it grabs people's attention and it causes controversy. And I'm trying to think in indie rock what causes the same kind of controversy. And the only thing I can think of is kind of outdated. It's something that is from the past. But you remember when people used to care about indie cred, like selling out? Like once upon a time, selling out was the worst thing you could possibly do. And nowadays,
it's the standard.
The standard, exactly. They're like, where's my McDonald's contract? Like, where do I sign? I just made this record. Like, here, please, go sell Pizza Hut with it. Like, or whatever. And I feel like that's missing now, from, I don't even know what we would have beef about in the indie world. Can you guys think of anything? I can't think of anything. Yeah,
unless you're stealing somebody's song, I can't really imagine there'd be anything to argue about. I mean,
right, which of course leads us to this incredibly problematic, as far as I'm concerned, ruling on the Blurred Lines record, which, just so everybody knows, back in March, a judge ordered Robin Thicke and Pharrell to pay $7.3 million to Marvin Gaye's family because they said that there was copyright infringement in the song Blurred Lines. Pharrell and Robin Thicke's lawyer appealed, and the new ruling that just came down in July is that the payment was reduced to $5.3 million, but now they have to hand over 50% of the song's future royalties to Marvin Gaye's family.
It's a big song, too.
Let's take a listen to a little bit of Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke and Pharrell.
And that's why I'm gonna take you good girls. I know you want it. I know you want it. I know you want it. Good girl. Can't let it get past me. Not far from plastic. Talking about getting
Now let's take a listen to Got to Give It Up by Marvin Gaye. What do you guys think of those two songs together, back to back?
I mean, I think it's pretty undeniable that there's quite a bit of crossover.
They definitely sound similar.
It's not the same song per se, but it's definitely like on the same wave. It sounds like someone just took it and flipped it almost, like a sample of some sort. Like they took the drum. I don't know. It sounds like the same pattern of movement, but it's not the same sounds. If that makes sense.
Right, and I think if you listen to that, it's the bottle hits. Like I'm pretty sure Pharrell is pretty sad that he decided to take those bottle hits, because that's what I think, that's that little tink tink, like that is what makes them sound identical to each other, because the bass lines are totally different. Like I was just listening, I was like, no, not the bass line. The problem is copyright infringement, copyright law. It covers melody, lyrics, harmony, and rhythm. And so the question is, did they really actually take any of those four elements? And the judge did not rule that in this ruling. The judge did not say that any of those four elements were infringed. Instead, they said this song sounds like this other song. And I'm really worried about that because to me that means, well, forget it, we're all screwed. Because now every single song, if it sort of vaguely reminds you of another song, what, you have to pay that person royalties for the rest of their life? I think that could be really opening the door to some serious problems.
I think in hip hop that's definitely really an issue because I mean obviously we do a lot of that. There's the sampling is exactly what it is that we do, and obviously that's slowed. That's actually in itself has changed hip hop a lot in that all the samples have to be cleared. There's a lot of law around that. There's a lot of money around that. Again, that whole mixed tape versus an album thing. I can't actually sell this material because I don't per se own all the parts of it, and things like that. It's really just the cannibalization of music is what hip hop really is. So kind of at a core. That ruling definitely has issues for us. I think that it's probably an accurate ruling in the end because those songs do sound terribly alike. I mean, not just the song, but the pitch of the singer, and really to me, it's the whole rhythm of the song, like the whole flow and rhythm of the sound is like exactly the same. But at the same time, that's kind of what hip hop is about. So
Right.
I wonder, to a degree, if a part of this is fueled by the fact this is not a hip hop song. This is really a pop song that was stolen and made into a pop song. So, I mean, in hip-hop, I can't imagine anyone's going to have this argument. But outside of that, I think it might be relevant more.
Well, I think just as contrast, let's listen to two songs that have literally the exact same chords and chord progression in the choruses. So the first song we're going to listen to is Stay With Me by Sam Smith.
Deep down, I know this never works, but you can lay with me so it doesn't hurt. Oh, won't you stay with me? 'Cause you're all I need. This ain't love, it's clear to see. But darling, stay with me.
And now we're going to listen to Tom Petty, Won't Back Down. So that's really shocking when you listen to that because really it's the same chords. It's just completely a different vibe in that song. Like those two songs just sound nothing alike because they have completely different vibes.
Right.
So I feel like one of the problems with Blurred Lines is that it is the vibe. It's like the vibe of the song is more perfectly in keeping with the Marvin Gaye song. But then that opens this can of worms because if that means that you can't, if how can we possibly make a judgment that's binding that has to do with vibe? It sounds really problematic to me.
Yeah. I would have to agree. I mean, especially now. I mean, it comes to a point where it's like how many sounds are there? How many melodies are
exactly.
there? At some point, your song is going to sound like someone else's. I know I've been in the studio and made music, and then came out and found someone else actually made like very similar music, and we're like, oh, well, we can't put this out now. It sounds just like that. So I mean, sometimes innovation just occurs at two places at once, or at two places in different times, and sometimes folks are just inspired by a sound they heard earlier. So I don't know. It's hard for me. I think as soon as you add money in the mix of music, though, and art, it makes it difficult. If you take all that away, it makes it really easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I'm just thinking this could really prove problematic down the road for a lot of people if suddenly we have to be worried that something might sound too much, have a similar vibe to some other song.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it's a really interesting gray area that, it just like, it sort of does like make me a little bit nervous because, I mean, obviously bands and artists are always influenced by the things that have come before them. Like, it's impossible not to be. I mean, there's constantly advancements. This is why, especially when we're talking about pop music, why there are like certain sounds and certain things that you hear in like literally every electronic song these days, and then someone comes and breaks the mold a little bit, and then that becomes the new normal. People gravitate toward these sounds, and audiences gravitate towards these sounds as well. The one thing that's interesting for me with the whole Pharrell Marvin Gaye thing was that they were the one that actually initiated the legal action in the very beginning.
Whoops.
So, and I understand that some of that can be a little bit protective as well, but it just seemed like an admission of guilt is, how it seems like from the public perspective, from the person that's not going to really dive deep into the legal sort of it. It just kind of seems like we did it. We're going to sue so you can't sue, so that's the part of it where kind of makes me think twice about, whether the ruling is right or not. But yeah, I agree with you that the way that the ruling came down, that does seem problematic. It seems a little bit scary.
Yeah, and to me, that sounds like some lawyer's idea. Like, hey, let's sue them before they sue us.
For their song.
Ooh, genius move.
George Bush preemptive strike.
Hey, let's attack a country that's got nothing to do with us and doesn't threaten us. Yay.
But they named the song right. I mean, blurred lines, apparently, with that ruling. It kind of
Yeah.
all works out, right?
Really hit the nail on the head.
So, James, what have you been listening to recently?
Oh my gosh. Rachel Grimes from the Rachels, she has a new album where she plays piano and it's really beautiful. So I've been listening to that because I spend most of my time outside of work reading. So I'm always just looking for music I can read to. So yeah, like punk and pop is kind of a rare treat for me. Like when I'm kind of resetting my palette, I'll listen to a few songs. I like this band called Youth Code a lot, and they kind of sound like a modern, like kind of all the best aspects of like Nine Inch Nails and Ministry and kind of like all those like early like industrial bands. And they just kind of like nailed all the best parts of that really well. So I like them a lot. I'm always trying to check out what the kids are doing, so I don't get called grandpa. And Wimps, of course, a band that's on KRS. I saw them a couple weeks ago in Seattle, and they're so awesome, and I just love them even outside of working with them. So been listening to them a lot.
And you were actually up in Seattle for a festival. We were talking earlier about festivals.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that festival?
Well, I kind of have a negative attitude towards festivals in general, but
So do we. That was the consensus. Right?
yeah. Our my coworker Ben, he brings up a really good point of like all of these shows now are just festivals when like Portland doesn't even really have like a solid all ages venue, and like pretty much all of my life I've lived in places that have had like kind of a steady all ages venue, and I think that's really disappointing that that's not important enough to Portland. And I feel like all these festivals are more about like trying to acquire like sponsorships and like kind of this big event that more just like boosts the promoter more than any of like the bands, or caters to like a enjoyable experience for the audience. Just like slam as much as you can into a day, and just have endless bands so everything just kind of blurs together. But the festival that I went into in Seattle, I went to because it was actually really unique. It was called the Substrata Festival, and it was focused on kind of like minimalist compositions. So a lot of kind of airy, like beautiful music. There was a woman who played a full-size harp, and a guy who played piano, who actually has the world record for playing piano the fastest, which he got in like the 80s or something. And he just continuously plays piano and has all these kind of esoteric ideas about, what he's doing and whatnot. And the festival really catered towards like active, attentive listening. It was in this beautiful chapel. I think they only sold like 100 passes, so it was relatively small. And you weren't supposed to talk, you weren't supposed to cough, you weren't supposed to get up and leave or come in during the music. And it was a little bit like an endurance test because some of the sets were kind of long and you're trying to sit really still and pay attention. And you find yourself it's kind of like trying to meditate. You're like rustling around. You're like, okay, I just got to stay still. But it was really rewarding because the sound was great and everything was just catered towards like a great like music listening experience. And so I don't even think it should be called a festival because it's nothing like, the Red Bull festivals or whatever else is going on. So
Yeah.
I don't remember what the original question was, but I'm kind of against festivals.
Well, I'm saying if you're not standing in a parking lot
Yeah.
in the dirt in 98-degree weather
Yeah.
with a $14 cup of beer, then you're clearly not at a festival.
Yeah, and when I was in my early 20s, I could enjoy that kind of experience, but
Oh, we all could
not anymore.
back in the day.
Yeah.
When
Oh,
we
now
were
I'm going to be
young.
called Grandpa. Thanks a lot.
I think we're out of time, you guys. I'd like to thank my guests, Max Smith, Chris Young, and James Reeling. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Now there's on.
And that's The Future of What. Thanks to Sarah Merck, Max Smith, Chris Young, and James Reeling for joining us. Visit our site to find links to all their journalistic work. We're at killrockstars.com/thefutureofwhat. On today's show, we played Wimps, Take It As It Comes, Kinski, Flight Risk, and Marnie Stern, Vibrational Match. Our theme song is Mind Your Own Business from the Delta 5. The show is produced by Will Watts and John Sepulvedo. Reed Harvey is our engineer. Special thanks to Digital One, where we record. We want to give a special shout out to Amy Polanski. She's leaving Digital One, and we want to wish her lots of luck. I'm Kill Rock Stars President Portia Sabin. Join us next week on The Future of What.